Chai, a kind man with a weathered face, loved driving. He had been driving his Songtho for over 20 years, navigating the winding roads of Chiang Mai with a sense of pride and familiarity. The open road was his sanctuary, a place where he felt truly free. He drove a Songtho, a red truck-like taxi in Chiang Mai. The Songtho was more than just a vehicle. It was a lifeline for the villagers, connecting them to the bustling city and each other. Chai knew every bump and turn on the rural roads, and he took pride in his role as a community connector. His 12-year-old son, Tak, always wanted to go with him. Tak admired his father and dreamed of one day driving the Songtho himself. He would often stand by the roadside watching his father drive away, his eyes filled with longing and admiration. Chai usually said no, wanting Tak to be safe at home, but today felt different. There was an unusual stillness in the air, and Chai felt a strange pull to keep his son close. He debated with himself, weighing the risks and the joy it would bring Tak.
"Please, Father, can I come with you today?" Tak's voice was filled with hope and excitement, his eyes wide with anticipation. He had been asking for weeks, and today he felt more determined than ever.
Tak really wanted to go, more than usual. There was something in his voice, a sense of urgency that Chai couldn't ignore. He saw the eagerness in his son's eyes and felt a pang of guilt for always saying no. Chai looked at his son, a strange feeling of worry washing over him. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was different today. His heart was heavy with concern, but he also felt an overwhelming need to protect and bond with Tak. He agreed, feeling a sudden need to keep Tak close. "All right, Tak," he said, his voice softening. "You can come with me today." The decision felt right, even though he couldn't explain why.
"All right, Tak, you can come just this once." Tak's face lit up with joy, and he quickly climbed into the Songtho, his excitement palpable. Chai watched him, a mix of pride and apprehension in his heart.
The sun was hot, and the air felt heavy and quiet. The usual hustle and bustle of the village seemed muted, as if the world was holding its breath. The dusty road stretched out before them, shimmering in the heat. Father and son drove without talking, only the sound of the old engine filled the air. The rhythmic hum of the engine was comforting, a familiar soundtrack to their journey. Tak looked out the window, taking in the sights and sounds of the village. The day was slow, not many people needed a ride. The roads were unusually empty, adding to the sense of stillness that hung in the air. Chai couldn't shake the feeling that something was different. But he pushed the thought aside, focusing on the road ahead. As the sun began to set, making the sky orange and purple, a woman waved them down. The vibrant colors of the sunset painted the sky, casting a warm glow over the landscape. Chai slowed the Songtho, pulling over to see what the woman needed. She wore white, and her long black hair flowed down her back. Her face was pale and pretty, but very sad. She wanted to go to Lamphun, a small town north of Chiang Mai. Something about her made Chai uneasy. He looked at Tak, who was unusually quiet, staring at the woman. Tak's stare was intense, filled with fear and something strange.
"Are you sure, son? It's getting late."
Tak didn't answer, his eyes locked on the woman. She turned, looking right at Tak, and a small, creepy smile appeared on her lips. Chai, feeling more and more uneasy, agreed to take her. As they drove, the sky turned dark, the pretty sunset colors fading into blackness. The woman sat quietly in the back, her presence feeling heavy in the small taxi. Her eyes were fixed on something far away, lost in thoughts that seemed to weigh her down. The dim light inside the car cast shadows on her face, highlighting the lines of worry and sorrow etched deeply into her features. The only sound was the wind, carrying a low, sad hum that seemed to go right through them. It was as if the night itself was mourning, the trees whispering secrets to each other in the darkness. The rustling leaves and distant howls added to the eerie atmosphere, making the journey feel even more unsettling. Chai tried to talk, but the woman only whispered short answers. Her voice was barely audible, like a ghostly echo in the confined space of the car. Each word she spoke seemed to carry a weight of its own, adding to the tension that was already palpable. She seemed lost in her own world, her eyes far away and full of sadness. It was as if she was seeing something that no one else could, something that was both haunting and inescapable. Her gaze never wavered, fixed on the darkness outside the window. Tak kept staring at her, and Chai could feel his son's fear. The boy's eyes were wide with a mixture of curiosity and dread, unable to look away from the mysterious passenger. Chai could sense the unease growing in the car, a silent tension that seemed to stretch with every passing second. Chai tried to get Tak to look away, but the boy couldn't take his eyes off her. It was as if he was drawn to her, compelled by an invisible force that he couldn't resist. Chai's attempts to distract him were futile. The boy's attention locked on the woman as if she held some dark secret.
Tak, look at the road, not the lady. It's going to be all right. Chai's voice was firm but gentle, trying to reassure his son while keeping his own anxiety in check. He knew they had to stay focused, especially on this treacherous road.
The road to Lamphun was long and curvy, surrounded by thick jungle that felt like it was closing in on them. The dense foliage on either side seemed to form a tunnel, the darkness pressing in from all directions. It was a road that demanded full attention, every twist and turn a potential hazard. The headlights cut through the darkness, showing twisted trees and bushes. Each flash of light revealed more of the eerie landscape, the gnarled branches and dense undergrowth creating a sense of foreboding. It was a journey that felt endless, the road stretching out before them like a path into the unknown. The air got colder, and the wind carried the smell of rain and something else, a faint, metallic smell that made Chai sick to his stomach. The sad hum grew louder, swirling around them. Chai's heart pounded. He wanted to turn back, to take his son and run, but something made him keep driving, like he had to take the woman to her destination.
Father, I see him! In the trees!
Chai felt a chill. He looked hard into the darkness, but saw nothing.
See who, son?
He asked, his voice shaky. Tak pointed a trembling finger at the trees.
The man, the one with the mangled leg.
I slammed on the brakes, the Songtheo skidding to a stop. The tires screeched against the asphalt, echoing through the silent night. My heart pounded in my chest as I tried to make sense of what I had just seen.
He stared into the darkness, unable to breathe. The air was thick with tension, and every shadow seemed to move with a life of its own. The forest around him was eerily quiet, as if holding its breath in anticipation.
There, at the edge of the road, stood a figure. It was barely visible in the dim light, but its presence was undeniable. My hands gripped the steering wheel tightly as I tried to make out more details.
The figure was hidden in shadow, its face impossible to see. It seemed to blend into the darkness, an indistinct shape that sent chills down his spine. The more he stared, the more it felt like the figure was staring back. But Chai could tell it was a man, his clothes ripped and bloody. The tattered fabric clung to his body, stained with dark patches that could only be blood. It was a sight that made Chai's stomach churn.
And as the headlights flickered, I swear I saw one leg, bent at a horrible angle, bones sticking out. The sight was so grotesque that I had to look away for a moment, my mind struggling to process the horror.
Pure terror filled Chai. He grabbed his son, holding him tight, trying to hide the scary sight from him. His son's small body trembled in his arms, and Chai could feel the boy's heart racing against his chest.
I buried my face in my father's chest, shaking all over. The fear was overwhelming and I could barely breathe. My father's arms were the only thing that felt safe in that moment.
The figure took a step closer, then another, limping towards them, moving in a jerky, unnatural way. Each step seemed to take an eternity, the figure's movements slow and deliberate, as if it was savoring their fear. A low moan came from its lips, a sound full of pain and anger. It was a haunting noise that seemed to pierce the night, making the hairs on the back of Chai's neck stand up. The moan grew louder, more insistent, as the figure drew nearer.
The mist began to thicken around them, swirling in the air like ghostly tendrils. The road ahead was barely visible, shrouded in an otherworldly fog that seemed to come from nowhere. It was as if the very night was conspiring to trap them in this nightmare.
He won't hurt you. Stop.
The figure stopped, its moans turning into a low growl. The woman got out of the Songtheo, her white dress bright in the darkness. She walked towards the figure, slowly and calmly.
He wants justice. He was hit by a car and left to die on this road. He wants you to know what happened. He just wants to be heard.
Chai stared at the woman, confused. He looked from her to the ghostly figure, then back again.
How do you know this?
The woman turned to face them, her face sad.
Because I was his wife.
The next morning, Chai and Tak went to a temple. They couldn't stop thinking about what happened. They walked into the quiet temple, the smell of incense calming them down. They found a monk, his face kind and wise. Chai told him everything, his voice shaking as he described the ghost and the woman. Tak held onto his father's shirt, his eyes wide with fear. The monk listened quietly. When Chai finished, the monk spoke, his voice gentle but strong.
The spirit is trapped. He can't rest because of how he died and because no one helped him.
What can we do?
Chai asked, desperate to help. He felt guilty. The monk told them to do a special ceremony for the dead man. He gave them incense, candles, and lotus flowers.
Offer these gifts with a good heart. Pray for his soul to find peace.
Chai and Tak did the ceremony carefully. They lit the incense and candles, they offered the lotus flowers, and they prayed for the man's spirit. As they prayed, Chai felt better. The guilt started to go away, replaced by a feeling of peace. He looked at Tak, and the fear in his son's eyes was gone. Leaving the temple, Chai felt lighter, like a heavy weight had been taken off him. What happened had scared him badly, but it also showed him that there are things we can't see. Life went back to normal, as much as it could. Chai kept driving his Songthao, but he never drove down Lamphun Road at night. He went to the temple often, praying for the dead man. One evening driving home, Chai thought he saw someone standing by the road. He was scared for a moment, but as he got closer, he saw it was just a trick of the light. He looked at the empty seat next to him, and a strange feeling came over him. He wasn't alone. He could feel her there, a faint smell of flowers, a gentle coolness. He smiled, feeling peaceful. He wasn't afraid anymore. He knew somehow that she was looking after them, a silent protector on the road.